And so we'll start with a book that I was reading on the plane on the way back, and I posted on my Instagram story, and Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep. And then I got a message from Chad with a photo of his book that he was reading at the same time, which was hilarious because we didn't know that we were reading the same book, and it worked out perfectly. So yeah, I just finished it the other day. Basically what it is, Matthew Walker is a PhD student in neuropsychology and in sleep science, right? And he runs a sleep institute in the States and is probably, I would say, the world's leading expert on sleep. He's spent the last 30 years of his life working on sleep and trying to understand why we sleep, what is important about it, how do you improve it, how do you fix a lot of the health conditions that come from sleep issues. And he put together this book that is basically a manual to understand the A to Z of sleep. Now, sleep has been something that's been kind of stigmatized in the past by the productivity community and guys like Elon Musk and these kind of guys who, if you look at the successful people, a lot of them will say they barely sleep at all, right? Yeah. And they work as hard as they can, and that's what allows them to be successful, putting in more hours than their competition. And this book kind of pushes back a little bit on this and kind of echoes what Arianna Huffington did in her book Thrive, talking about how it's actually a mistake to cut down on your sleep and think that the extra hours are going to give you extra productivity. Yep. It's basically the conversation is quality versus quantity, right? So in the hours that you're awake, how much quality work are you doing? How much important work are you doing? And what are you sacrificing in order to get that extra amount of sleep?
Yep.
If you're sleeping 4 to 6 hours a day, you might have more hours working, right? So you might be working 12, 13, 14 hours. But those extra hours you should be sleeping are probably, mentally you're probably tired, you're fatigued, you're not working as efficiently as you could be, and the trade-off there is maybe not right. And so what this book tries to do is it tries to argue for a life where you focus on your sleep and you make sure your sleep is of high quality, that you get your 8 hours every single night, and dispel some of the myths that come around how do you catch up sleep, for example, right? So like someone like me, I'll sleep very little during the week because I'm pushing and grinding, working as hard as I can. And then I think I'll sleep in on Saturday and Sunday and I'll catch up that time that I missed out. And this book, for example, just shows that no, that doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You can't just catch up sleep debt like that. You actually need to have a regular routine where you're getting your 8 hours every single night. So that's kind of what I took out of it. What did you think about it, Chad?
So
Did you enjoy it?
To be completely honest, I kind of go on the naughty list here. I haven't finished the book.
I see.
It's certainly not one that is a kind of light read that you kind of take along to bed, and you definitely start getting sleepier as you read it. But I think from where I am in the book, it certainly is insightful, and just like you say, kind of the key message being that you need that kind of religious sort of repetitive similar cycle of sleep. Don't change it up too much. And we've seen a couple of initiatives, like for example the bedtime feature on your Apple Clock app, which is trying to really make it kind of accessible in a visual way. That you basically are thinking about these things. We've got activity trackers as well these days that track our sleep, and people are becoming a lot more interested in this. But yeah, I mean, I think some of the key things that I've taken so far from the bit that I have read, speaking about your jet lag bit earlier, I found that incredibly interesting. So this is the little stat that I took out of it, which is for every day you're in a different time zone, your suprachiasmatic nucleus can only readjust by about 1 hour. So, I mean, how many days has it been since you got back? What was the sort of time difference? And, does that kind of explain why you're still catching up?
Yeah, so I've been back around 4 days or 4.5 days now,
Right.
and the time zone difference was 10 hours, so I'm clearly not there yet, and I do
100%.
feel that. I do feel, I don't feel 100% yet. I was in a meeting yesterday, and I kind of zoned out at one stage, and I couldn't figure out why I was zoning out, and I realized, okay, my brain is just confused, right?
Yeah.
I think jet lag, a few important things for me is that one, it's very, very dependent on the person, right? I've had people who've got such wide-ranging experiences when it comes to jet lag. Some people really struggle and they take like a good week and a bit to get themselves right, and other people seem to be able to do it in a day or two. So I think it really depends on your biology, but also it depends on the kind of things you do on that flight or before you leave your original location to get to the destination. So I've done a lot of travel over the last kind of year, and I've gotten a lot better at fighting this jet lag by simple things like hydration is super important.
Yeah,
Simple things like trying to sleep in the right time zone, so sleeping in the time zone that you're going to, not the one that you're in.
100%.
So there's various things you can do to try and trick your body into getting that body clock fixed quicker. But the reality is that you're never going to feel great when you arrive, and it's going to take you a while to get back to 100%. And that kind of science you spoke about just shows that how long it can take, right? If you really are struggling to gain an hour every single day, it can take you a good 2 weeks to get back to where you should be.
100%. I mean, I took two other bits out of the piece that I have read. I think I found this incredibly interesting. I mean, I personally am not a drinker of coffee and caffeine, but just the way that Matthew Walker speaks about caffeine is interesting to me. How he kind of mentions it as one of the biggest drugs in the world that is not regulated, not kind of your consumption of it is not governed, and he really does explain how it basically masks one of the hormones that basically generates sleep pressure. So I mean, essentially he basically says that the average half-life of caffeine is kind of 5 to 7 hours. So a lot of people will have it before bed. They'll have decaf as well. And what he mentions is, decaf still contains 15 to 30% of the caffeine content of fully caffeinated drink. And because you've consumed that before bed, it's going to take 5 to 7 hours for half of that to exit your system. And so although you might not feel it, it will certainly affect you in some way, in terms of the quality of your sleep, like Barry was saying. I mean, didn't you find that quite an interesting one?
Yeah, I really did. I think that it kind of puts a lot of the myths aside as to when you should be drinking your coffee.
Yeah.
I think about the number of my friends who will go out for a dinner, and the dinner will finish at 9:30 in the evening, and they'll have a coffee after dessert, right? A cappuccino, whatever the story is. And it's a really nice thing to do at the end of a dinner. And you just wonder, as you say, when you look at that science, you realize, oh wait, that caffeine's going to be in my system the whole night.
Yeah.
It's going to disrupt my whole night's sleep. I'm going to feel worse the next morning. It kind of makes you think about when you should be when your caffeine should be being drunk, right? Or when you should be taking caffeine. 100%. And like you, I'm not a huge caffeine person myself, so luckily it's not a huge thing for me. But I have a lot of friends who can't function without it, right? They can't function without it, and they've become so dependent on caffeine that in order to work, in order to get themselves going in the morning, in order to stay awake, say in the afternoon slump, they need that cup of coffee. And this book kind of pushes back on that and says maybe you should think about how dependent you are on this drug.
100%. So just to touch back on the Elon Musk and the various kind of literature that's been released in recent times, about kind of maximizing the time you have in the day and seeing sleep as kind of a waste, if you'd like, of time, and how he kind of challenges that concept. The very sort of interesting kind of scientific explanation he gives behind it is your REM sleep, right? So when we talk about quality of sleep, REM sleep being the one of the kind of key bits where your kind of memories of the day and all of that kind of thing happens, and your sorts of neural connections start to kind of transpire in that sort of section of sleep. The thing that I found very interesting is his explanation of how REM sleep is rear-loaded. So if you sleep, for example, 6 hours as opposed to sleeping 8 hours, you're actually, although you're kind of only missing out, let's say 25% of total time slept, the kind of REM sleep lost is around 60%, which I found really, really interesting. Because as you say, you kind of don't really think about it much. I'm only missing out on 25% of sleep. Meanwhile, the kind of productive part of sleep and the sort of reason why we do sleep, you're actually missing out on 60% of that.
And I think that's where a lot of the sleep science has really started to get our intuitions and like fight our intuitions about what sleep should be. 10, 20 years ago, none of the science was around, so no one understood this kind of stuff. But all this work that these guys have been doing to understand the science has given us these insights, like you say, and completely agree. Like it's really tough to think that those last 2 hours actually hold a lot of the value. And if you're not getting those last 2 hours, you're actually shortchanging yourself more than you think you are.
Across the pond.